So now we have heard so much from our regional neighbors, I suppose it would also be very timely to hear from our local Singapore manufacturers who are currently at different stages of their I4.0 journeys, to share about their experiences, approaches, and best practices to kickstart and adopt I4.0 for their businesses. So just a very quick round of introduction of our panel speakers. For our panel moderator, we have Mr. Simon Lim, Executive Director of Enterprise Singapore, where he leads the manufacturing and engineering group to support Singapore companies to become more competitive and pursue opportunities overseas. For our panelists, we have a lineup of Singaporean SME owners. First on the screen, we have Mr. Kwan Feng, the third generation of his family business, CKE Manufacturing, a company that specializes in machining high-mix, low-volume precision engineering parts. Next on the screen is Mr. Kenneth Lim, second generation of his family business, Lingjack Holding, the biggest manufacturer of firefighting products in Singapore. In recent years, Lingjack has diversified into many areas and developed many new in-house innovations that are beyond firefighting solutions. Next, we also have Ms. Joyce Seow, similarly second generation of her family business, Watson EP, an end-to-end manufacturer of industrial and consumer products with full productization capabilities. Just this year, Watson EP was listed as Singapore's fastest growing company by the Straits Times. Also joining us on the panel is Mr. David Chai, Center Director of Singapore's Food Innovation and Resource Centre, FIRC, a center that is part of Singapore Polytechnic, the very first polytechnic established in Singapore. FIRC supports and has to date supported numerous food companies in new product and process development. Let's put on our virtual applause to welcome Simon and our panelists. Simon, please.
Okay, thank you, Siqian. Welcome and good morning to everyone. The purpose of this session is really to give the voice from Singapore. So what we have today are 3 small business owners, as well as a technical center from one of our polytechnics, the Singapore Polytechnic. So jumping right in my dealings with a lot of the local enterprises in Singapore, we find that a lot of the companies are not very sure as to when is the best time to get started. How should they get started, and what do they do as the first steps? So maybe that's the first question that I'll pose to Li Feng, which is why did your company, CKE Manufacturing, decide to embark on this path of maybe it just started with automation, and now it has progressed to even more advanced technology. Li Feng, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Li Feng from CKE Manufacturing. So how we started our I4.0 discovery journey was back in 2016 when we attended a seminar hosted by Syntech at the Tower Block in NTU. So the reason that triggers our interest in 4.0 is that we see the digitalization process or the digitalization aspect as extension of a supply chain, extension of a FTA that our government have done plugging Singapore in. So in the early days when Singapore was plugged into the global supply chain and with all the FTA signed, it gave us access to the market. But even then, I think the cost of management, the cost of venturing aboard to manage the operations and to control is still a difficult challenge. And that is why I think a lot of veterans say you need to find the right partner. So no doubt partner is still very important. I think with digitalization, you will enable the cost of venturing and scaling overseas to be reduced. And it will be like an extension of our global supply chain and FTA that our country already have. So that aspect of digitalization will complement the market access with control and management for manufacturing company.
So, Feng, what you just shared is that you dealt with our Singapore Institute of Manufacturing Technology.
Yes.
That's one of our nationally government-funded institutions, and one of their key roles, of course, is to help companies like yours. And through their persuasion, you decided to procead.
Not persuasion. I think after the presentation, actually, I actually have goosebumps at the back of my neck, and it's just very exciting. So at that time, I think we don't really know where to start, but we just need to know. We just want to get started as soon as possible. Yeah. So that started our discovery journey for our I4.0.
Okay. So maybe now I'd like to invite Joyce. If she also had a similar experience, or was it under, how you say, different circumstances?
So for me, we run a manufacturing company, so any form of automation is going to be high cost, but for digitalization is much easier. So actually we started our first MRP back then there was no ERP, so it's MRP in year 2000. Then, but the recent 3-4 years, we have been upgrading our system to enterprise resources planning system, the ERP. Then every year or so, quite regularly, we'll put in digital solutions to enhance our own journey for the I4.0. So it's the urgency that we feel being in the digital age, and there's potential to harness, but yet being an SME with limited budget, full automation is always a challenge. Yeah, so what we do is we do our digitalization journey.
Can I probe a bit when you say digitalization? How did you go about it? Is it of course, the what people have in mind is that you would need to lay out the processes first, documentation, but how does one convert, how you say, normal process flow into digitalized process flow?
Right.
Joyce, would you add on to that?
Sure. So having an ERP, the full-fledged ERP system, so basically links all the different departments and the workflow processes together. But when we put in enhancements like having the factory track, which is doing barcoding and automating some of the processes, we actually take a step further to try to improve our efficiency and productivity. So along the way, we'll take on learning. I think the panel one, some of the panelists have mentioned like learning. So we also start to do more learning these few years. Example like the IHCI project that's run by SBF, then with McKinsey consultants and Ernst & Young. We embark on that as well as part of to see how do we take on the final aspects of digital solution, how do we do better data analysis to train our workforce to be ready for the digital age when we go towards implement more and more digital solutions. So we can't do it overnight, so we can do gradual steps towards this journey.
Okay, so Joyce, that's the I4.0 Human Capital Initiative. It's something put in place by WSG for Singapore.
Yes.
And it helps companies to kick off the I4.0 process by helping with sensorization, and then helping you to interpret the data and to see what action steps you can take. So I'll come back to you later a bit on that. I think one theme that has come up is that Singapore government is very active, in helping the companies in Singapore. But then again, of course, Singapore government is not able to engage all 200,000 companies out there. So maybe I because there are many, so we go through many multipliers. So one of the multipliers that we have is our polytechnics, and we have the Food Innovation and Resource Center. David is here together with us. So maybe David, in your experience dealing with many food manufacturers, and many of them I think will be small manufacturers. What would be some of your observations, in terms of, is there really a good time to start it? Is there really a trigger, that causes companies to proceed, or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, so I like you said, I think we started our journey quite long back, I think 2012. There was a drive for automation. Many companies saw the value in automation. They understood it. And that's where we had a unit called the Food Automation Unit that was also sponsored by ESG for us to reach out to them, I think, to create awareness. But beyond creating awareness, having the advisory services to help them to look at what are the opportunities that's available. And after that, to be able to help them to do this cost effective type of adoption, right? So I think through this type of engagement, I think it is, for them, automation is something that they see the value in, because there is a certain need for them to use automation in a way to have higher quality of the products. You are able to use automation to increase the productivity. So I think automation is something that companies understand. But of course, the cost of automation, the ROI, is something that most companies just have to overcome to be able to do that. So the value is there. I think it's pretty well understood. But then, of course, each of them will have to derive the business case. And for units like us, we go in, we help them, we journey with the company to understand where the possibilities are, and then we point out. I think especially for those companies that already have this vision in mind, we then work and journey together with them to be able to realize it for them. Right. I think digitalization is something that maybe of late there is a theme that has come up, right? In the Food Manufacturer Association, I think when they did a poll with their members, I think this use of digitalization, there's a lot of interest in it. When EDB rolled out the SIRI, the Singapore Industry Readiness Index, I think a lot of them wanted to get a sense of where they are, what are the opportunities. But then I think the gap there is, after you find out what are the possibilities, what next? What will be the next steps? So I'm very glad that Feng talked about a SimTech, right? I think SimTech also has a lot of awareness platforms for them to be able to find out a lot more, right? And after finding out a lot more, I think the next step is, how do we help them in the adoption piece, right? And I think they are looking forward to, okay, so how really can I use this? What value can I get from digitalization, right? Automation is pretty well understood, but digitalization, what does it mean, right? What does digitalization mean? Is it maybe having a computer, having maybe maybe SMS alert system, or something beyond that? So I think awareness platforms, maybe demonstrating what's the value, having some of these solutions, and then being able to help them in the adoption, maybe having smaller pieces of solutions that that will relate to their day-to-day kind of problem sets, and then helping them to see how it can be applied to their shop floor. I think that probably is something that manufacturers, from our experience, is looking at, right? I guess the current...
Okay, I think that's a good point. I think maybe now I'll bring it to Feng and Kenneth together, because both of you are relatively well into your journeys, because you all have implemented, and also in previous discussions with you, I've had some understanding of what you've done in your various factories. So maybe could you outline what are some of the solutions? Would it be possible to differentiate them between solutions that you quickly can see some results, or and then solutions where definitely it will take a longer time to see the benefits in terms of streamlining the factories that you have in Singapore? Kenneth, maybe you can kick us off.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yes, actually for us, when we go in to do automations, in fact, we always start with what we call the pain point, where there's all the repetitive work, and that's where you can see immediate improvements as you go. Then from there, we will take up more challenging works, more complicated automation work. Yes, that is how we take it step by step to where we are now. Then once we finish all the automation, then of course we move on to so-called acquire the data, get back all the data, where we have our own ERP systems, where we can then improve further on the digitalization process. Okay, that is where, what we are doing. In fact, we are still improving ourselves, okay, on both areas of work, from the robotics all the way to the digitalizations.
Feng, anything to add to that?
Yes, I agree with Kenneth that we should start from the pain point and work on the repetitive stuff. So for ours, our pain point was to process the customer purchase order and translate it into sales order and subsequently work order. And then through this process, there's a lot of things we need to check. We need to check our engineering drawings. We need to check our customer specification. What is the call out? We need to check the prices of the raw material. We need to check the price that we quoted them. So this entire process was quite tedious. And with that, when we went out to look for a solution, we did face headwind. And fortunately, that time I managed to link up with IPI Singapore. So they actually introduced a few vendors for us to look at after understanding our problem. So I think IPI contextualized our problem and brought it to the vendors. So after that, we look at their OCR and RPA. So OCR is optical capture, character recognition, and robotic process automation. So what we did was we used the OCR to scan all our customer purchase order, and then extract the data, do a quick check with our database to understand whether the price is correct, the raw material availability, the engineering specs and the drawings is up to date. So this allows us to reduce our timing. We tested two lines now, two product lines. So we reduce our timing from, I think one work order usually will take, say one line will take about 10 minutes. And then with OCR RPA is about 1 minute plus 2 minutes. Yeah, and that's how we want to ensure that the capturing of the data is clean. And yeah, so we want to ensure the repetitive stuff is resolved and then the clean data comes in.
Li-Feng, how much did this RPA solution cost you? If that's not confidential.
I think the pricing depends on the
but
the pricing is I think the pricing is at the
maybe
range of
all right, yeah, no, because I think that okay, so a few, maybe 10, it costs more than $10,000. Well, maybe the point I want to make is
more than 10, less than 5, less than 50. Yeah, more than 10, less than 50.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on the number of templates you want to scan, the data you want to extract, and the process you want to automate. So for our case, with a staff of about 50, our costing is in the above 10, below 50.
Okay. Well, I thought those were quite interesting points that you shared, because a lot of times, when we think about I4.0 and how they are implemented, there's, somehow it's about the thinking that a lot of people will have is about robotics, it's about a lot of interconnected systems and things like that. But I mean, from the example that you shared, even things that are quite, how you say, straightforward, like robotic RPA, the process automation, scanning of information, and I suppose it's connected to internet or intranet just to compare data. It takes a lot of the tedium out of the work, but I think more importantly, it allows you to respond very quickly, right? Yeah, to the business. Yeah. So now maybe let's come back to Joyce. Yes, I know you recently went through a process where, with some Singapore government help, you were able to get consultants to come in, sensorize, a part of the production, and some analysis of the data, which allowed you to take certain steps. So maybe the question is, were there any surprises when you started to analyze the data?
Definitely. So
could you share a bit on that?
Correct. So we started just 1 week before the circuit breaker in Singapore. But on looking back, actually, I'm glad it happened at that time. So during the circuit breaker in the beginning, the consultants were doing all these virtual sessions with our team. So it was more of to understanding the theory of all the digitalization, the culture, the mindset needed for this journey. And of course, getting the data, the past data. So when we could, under special exemption, we could start some operations. Then the process begins of collecting data. We put in certain sensors at our manual line. So I think as what Li Feng and Kenneth said, I picked the pain point, the most manual and the highest reject issue in my plating line. So we do electroplating, that's like chrome on plastics. So there's we had different sizes of the parts. So the small parts we are getting pretty good yield, but the larger parts for some reason not up to expectation. So we're trying to see, what's going on? How do we get help to see with data and the consultants? How do we solve this problem? So the surprise was that obviously the McKinsey consultants were not in our industry of the plating. So my team was a little bit skeptical at first, like, okay, if they are not in the industry compared to us who have been doing this for 40 years, what possible insights could they arrive at? But then the surprise was at the end of the 8 weeks, with data analytics, we picked all the different parameters, operating parameters, the time, the cycle time, the rejects. And with the data analytics, they could arrive at some probable causes of what causes that reject. So that was surprise to myself and obviously the team. So definitely the buy-in was much better. Like, okay, that's the power of harnessing all this data and putting it using the right kind of techniques, the analysis done, rather than to do trial and error basis. So yeah, that's the whole journey of during that time. So with the COVID-19, of course, there's so much negativity around. So it was great that our team had something to focus on that was positive. Then we do our learning during this period.
Are you starting to see, well, I know it's still early days yet, but are you starting to see maybe a change in some of the mindsets and dare I bring up the word culture in the mindsets of the workforce?
Yes, progressively for the past 3-4 years, with like we mentioned, the digitalization, all smartphones and all, our team was already getting more open to this. Previously, a little bit resistant, but with the ICI and of course, so the COVID-19, what it brought about was this acceleration in digitalization. Everybody knows, so we have to use our phones to do safe entry check-ins and all. So from there, even operators, we had to spend a bit of time, my HR, admin, and my management team, my ops manager. Sometimes at the beginning, we have to be there to assist all our operators from different nationalities and different educational levels, how to use the smartphone to do all these safe entry checks and etc. But they managed to learn. So from this, everybody's like a little bit more confident, and obviously they understand the importance of having digitalization to help push our business forward.
Okay, well, Singapore is definitely a higher cost country, compared to the region. So some of the points that you all have brought up, through this conversation so far is that the benefits are through better quality, faster response. So in your minds right now, in Singapore, and this is a question for all four of you, is it a case where by now, it is less about cutting down the workforce? It is more about speed, it is more about quality, it is more about yield. In a way, the question I have for the four of you, at least from your own experience, have you already gone past that? Or is it a case whereby, the how you say the workforce aspect is still a important point in your mind? So
maybe
Joyce, you can continue. Yes.
Sure. So yes, it's really not about reduction in the workforce. In fact, this period of time is much harder to get manpower for, say, an operator, not so much for the PMETs, but actually for the operator level. Therefore, we feel that there's even the urgency is there to really go towards Industrial 4.0. So I've done some digitalization and done some enhancement, but it's a long journey. It's never ending. So the next step is actually to consider very much on having more automation in our shop floor. So we do molding machines, so that is already kind of automatic when you put the tool on the machine and it just punches out every like 30 seconds or so. But after that, like preventive maintenance, putting more sensors, all this will be our next step. So it's not so much of cutting down on manpower, it's rather upgrading the workforce that we have to work towards, to combine both digital automation and with our human manpower.
Okay, well, David, I know that quite a few of the people, attending this discussion, they are related to food, and they could be from the region, where budgets are always tight. So let's say if you had that group in mind, and then you look at the Singapore companies, what were some of the things that they could do, with reasonable budget and being able to get some results in the near term? Would you be able to share a bit on that?
Yeah. So I think we actually were looking at this area because a lot of the food manufacturers have legacy machines that they have been using for some time, and they're used to doing that. So this journey of I4.0 isn't about replacing all these machines, having a new line, but it's about how you can upgrade that, give them a bit of ability to collect data and stuff like that, right? So we had actually showcased quite a number of these possibilities last year during ITAP as well, where we showed how we are able to add sensors to your legacy equipment. Some examples include maybe because there was this problem statement of maybe looking into a tank. Sometimes a tank is pretty big. You are producing something in the tank. You had to climb up to take a look at the level. So instead of climbing up to look at the level, you could just install a simple sensor, and with a tower light to show the level. So you can just from very far, you can see, you can actually collect that. You don't need to have manpower looking at it. So it was something very simple. But I think there was a lot of interest because this was something in the processes of many of these food industry players. And the cost of implementing something like that will be less than 5,000. Right? It's not expensive. It's not going to, break the bank, right? But I think some of these small steps that can be taken to be able to demonstrate that, actually digitalization isn't that, of a big step. There could be small steps, small wins, demonstrate success that, that some of these companies can take. Then overall, I think you can see as the companies embark on this journey, you can have a bigger and bigger ambitions of how all these things can eventually be connected together. Yeah.
Well, I certainly would like to pick on that theme because this is maybe I'll start with Kenneth, because Kenneth, I mean, your company is the leading manufacturer of fire extinguishers in Singapore, and yes, and I think it's the combat brand that you have. But I noticed on your website you also have Lingjack Digital. And that seems to be a set of solutions to help companies digitalize certain types of operations. So maybe could you talk about how your automation and digitalization effort opened up that new business opportunity for you?
Yeah, actually, thanks to ESG, as well as I say, we started our automation process. Then from there, we take on to build our own technology teams, where we build our own ERP systems, okay, and so on. Then from that onward, we see that SME, there's actually a need for such a solutions. Okay, that is why actually we spring off the whole business out and become very focused on this technology business, where we can offer, okay, as a whole solution, from robotics, to a streamlined operation, digital operations, where all these can be remotely controlled. Okay, that is what our vision is. Yeah. So what we see is from the whole technology cycle, right? You're actually adding a lot of value to your employee. Get them to learn new skill, upskill them. Even our production workers, okay, they are actually enjoying the process, from the whole automations to the digitalization process. Okay. So what we did now,
yeah. Well, I was about to ask if you have any cultural learnings, and maybe this is a question for Joyce as well, because both of you have your headquarters in Singapore, and you also have operations outside Singapore. So would there be any cultural learnings that you have, across different countries in implementing some of the projects, automation, and ideas that we are discussing?
I think our experience is, in fact, actually technology helps, us in pulling out all the different cultures together, on the same platforms, with these technologies. Yes. So maybe Joyce, you can share.
So we have a headquarters in Singapore with some production facilities and a manufacturing plant in South China. So Singapore, well, we have the workforce is aging workforce, is a slightly more mature workforce compared to our China workforce, which is relatively younger. So adoption and the culture of having some I4.0 is different. It's being younger in China, they are easier for them, and China already they have like WeChat Pay, it's all cashless already. So for them, it comes a bit easier. In Singapore, you feel a little bit more resistant, especially for the little bit more mature. They are not, first thing they always say, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this. So there's a lot of retraining to be done. So that's the difference I see between both countries' culture. But at the same time, because we are very lucky in Singapore to have some government support for some of these digital solutions, I4.0 journey, we are able to try it out here, like the barcoding system and all. Then in China, we implement it later after the Singapore plant has successfully done so.
Okay, thank you for that input. I now have a question from the floor. Have there been instances where the pilot adoption is successful, but the actual rollout is troubled by other issues? So definitely, it's always, there are always challenges on the ground. So maybe the question I have for everyone is, are there any best practices that you think can be shared in order to mitigate some of these occurrences?
So for my personal journey is such that if the top management is in it right from the start, the beginning, that's where the implementation is has a higher chance of success. But previously when we tried, the minute the management let go a little bit, and then that's where some things were not too successful. Like that's where I think the question comes up. In the beginning, pilots okay because it was everybody all hands on deck. But after that, when we leave it to the ground to get going, then there could be some hiccups. So I think it's really having to monitor on a very regular basis, and knowing the team and the workforce mentality culture behind it, and then how much you have to journey with them to get them on board and make it smooth.
Okay, good.
Maybe Li Feng and Kenneth, your experience on that.
I think for us, I think pilot-wise, most of the time it will be successful, and because it's contained and it doesn't really work with the data doesn't really flow through all the different stakeholders and affect their work instruction or their process, their ISO QP, like their procedures and all this. So I think on hindsight, what we could have done better would be to map the flow of the digitalization process, in this case, with the work instruction and with the procedures that we have in the company. And I think that will reduce the blind spots and reduce the if you want to go out second phase in the future. So I think that is
for them to select and schedule one-on-one sessions with you if they are interested.
Keep the interest there and do quick wins.
Yeah, I agree with Li Feng because also we have implemented something pilot time, exactly like what Li Feng mentioned. The work processes is smooth, but when we roll out, then we realize that oh no, there's actually some obstruction and all that we fail to foresee. So have different like options and all. Then there will always be a solution to work around, but it can be more tedious to achieve the end goal. But we have to keep trying. So we have to work with consultants to see okay, how do we tweak that in order to work around this issue.
So I think, Joyce, your point is that the boss needs to be quite on the ground, and I think those are points that are also being echoed by Li Feng. So, okay, we have about less than 5 minutes left. So maybe, I'll pose one question to David, as kind of a final query to him, which is, in food, in food manufacturing, there are always a lot of challenges. A lot of the companies are small. So any 1 or 2 sentences of advice for them, given the current COVID situation, and also given the various challenges that you see, and also the opportunities that you think is out there.
Yeah. So I think I would think that for small companies, I think it's important to, like what many of my fellow panelists have said, you need to start small and demonstrate success, right? Do take the first step. You have to take the first step in order to do that. But I think in Singapore, you have units like us, right, where we can take the step together with you, right, where we have experience from different companies. For food, like you said, there's complicated and there are many different type of food applications. But I think for us, we have the view into many different type of this. So really do take the first step, demonstrate success, and then success will follow. That as you use that to get your people on board.
Well, yes, thank you, David. That's for the Singapore enterprises, where they can come to your polytechnic, center, your center in the polytechnic for help. I guess for the regional companies who are listening in, maybe the advice we can give them is that we have a lot of good solution providers that are also active in the region. And Enterprise Singapore is always out there helping to connect the solution providers to the demand, to the regional demand. Kenneth, any last thoughts from you? From as a boss who has pretty much seen it all, and even gone into new products and technologies. Maybe I'll let you have the last word, which is any words of advice, not just to the Singapore bosses out there, but to the regional bosses who may be listening in.
For me, will be to embrace technology, put some effort to understand how technology can help you sustain your business. Okay, it will go a long way, and of course, the learning is an ongoing learning process. Okay, today you learn something, and maybe you encounter some issue. As you go, as you learn, you will actually improve and resolve it. Yeah, and definitely in the long run, you'll benefit from technologies.
Okay, Kenneth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I want to thank the audience, for participating and also for your questions. I hope most of them were answered. And Kenneth, Li Feng, Joyce, David, thank you so much, for joining us today. And, it's been a very useful and fruitful and beneficial session, even for me. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you.